Hey guys, how's everyone's energy right now? Yay. So, so I am one of like maybe less than 10 people who've actually had a proposal passed by Arbitrum DAO. So I've got a lot of like lessons which I've like kind of systematized of if you want a proposal to be passed by Arbitrum DAO, what is like the best way and the best principles to keep in mind. I've also, I think, made history in Arbitrum where this proposal, like we asked for 35 million ARB and we had 99.7% people voting for it. Like it's always very contentious when you're asking for large amounts of money, but we actually managed to get a lot of consensus in Arbitrum and get this passed by a record number. So like, let me start like from the kind of top and just make it like somewhat interactive as well. How many of you all have identified a problem that you're writing a proposal around? Okay, one problem. What is the problem, if you can share it?
Yeah, we're working on making sure that new contributors to the Arbitrum DAO understand how the Arbitrum DAO works and get their feet under them, get ready to participate.
Can we get on the recording? Can you
Of course, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, we are working on the problem of when new contributors come in, they often don't know where to start. Maybe they're just like DMing people or trying to figure things out on Twitter. But we're trying to solve the problem of like giving them the information they need from the get-go so that they can bring value to the DAO.
Awesome, yeah. Any other problems that people have identified which they're working on and they want to share? Okay, nice. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we are working in trying to bring the governance of Arbitrum 1 and Nova into the orbits.
Very cool, yeah. So it's like, so this is like the first step where you identify the problem that we need. And what is our initial instinct after we identify the problem? Our initial instinct, and I don't know if that's true for both of you as well, is this is the solution. You know, like here's our solution, and this is why it's a good idea to do this to solve the problem. That's exactly what you should not be doing when you write a proposal for Arbitrum DAO. What you should be doing is this is the problem, and then try to map out the entire solution space. And this can take a lot of work and research where you're saying, hey, this is a problem. Solution 1, this is like something which someone is doing. Solution 2, this is what someone is doing. Solution 3, solution 4, solution 5. So you're actually mapping out the entire space so people get a holistic 360-degree view of it. Because like something I've seen in DAOs is that you can't approach them as a business relation that, hey, you have a problem, I'm solving the problem for you, it's going to make us both better off, let's do it. That is not going to like get a lot of engagement on the forum. What does get engagement is when we frame it as an experiment. That, hey, there's this problem, we don't know which is the right solution because really no one knows what the right solution is, right? It's going to be through data and experimentation that we figure it out. So these are the different solutions that we can work on. And here's a mechanism for selecting at least 2 solutions. So don't have single vendor lock-in when you're writing proposals. That's something which I've seen, like so many different proposals that started as single vendor lock-in just got rejected. And then when they were made as a framework with like elections and you can choose multiple solutions, it got passed. Like an example is STIP. Camelot initially asked for liquidity incentives, rejected. They then created, like, then through TNOM and others, they created STIP, it got passed. Same with the Arbitrum coalition. Blockworks gave a proposal, rejected, because Blockworks was saying, give us money to do this. Then someone like Joseph went and created the ARDC, and it got passed, because that had elections for choosing different members. So that's really, so again, like just to recap, you've identified a problem, which is great. You have mapped out the entire solution space to the problem. So it's not just your solution. Your solution can be one, but you should have at least 3, 4 others. And then you need a mechanism for selection of at least 2 solutions. So these are the 3 things that you should keep in mind, like problem, solution, how do you choose at least 2 solutions? What is the process for selecting at least 2 solutions? Like I wanted to know your thoughts on like whether you have other solutions and how have you thought about this? Are you just like directly pitching your own solution or are you mapping out the space?
Well, we know there is the possibility to use different solutions. that requires more effort, more liquidity, more technical knowledge, and a lot of more things that why we are thinking that we maybe are putting on the table. I don't want to see better after hearing you an alternative solution for the people to decide if it's better or not. But this is very interesting because we were not going to do that, and now we are going to do. So what I get from what you said is like, okay, this is a problem. We are proposing this solution, and there is these other solutions that exist in the space, and maybe there is more. Not be closed like, hi, we are the one that knows everything and we know how to solve it. And please do your own research before voting, and also give feedback. It's something more like this. It's okay.
Yep. That's great. Yeah. So you can say that we represent this particular solution and we think this is the best, which is why we are working on it. But we've also spoken to other teams that are working on these other solutions. So that's the second part, like, which is very important in terms of writing proposals. Don't just write it from your own mind. Actually go out into the world and research and interview people, like, people who are working on the same problem. Go interview them, and then when you write in the forum, I also interviewed XYZ team and they said so and so. That just adds like way more credibility. You've not just sat in a room and wrote a proposal. You've actually gone and interviewed the team that would apply under the proposal and that would give their own feedback. So it's a lot of it is like, I'm a journalist by training. So like a lot of it is just like reporting out your proposal. You also, right? Yeah.
Excellent.
So just treat it like a journalist. Like you have to interview sources. You need to kind of talk to different people, and that's how you write a proposal. Yeah.
Well, in fact, I think Julieta interviewed everyone here about our proposal, so we have a lot of feedback on this. This should be then in the proposal, the product of these interviews and this talk to everyone here.
Yep.
You want to
exactly.
say
No.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. 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 Hey there. I wanted to know if you can talk a bit about the solution and whether you've mapped out the entire solution space to the problem that you've identified.
Yeah, definitely. So we're thinking about building kind of like an autonomous incubator for, I don't mean to just use buzzwords, but for the new contributors coming in. So the idea is that it'll be kind of like a onboarding pack where we use token gated videos with live peer, that maybe there's one video on how governance works, maybe there's one on how to connect with the community IRL and online. And so once they complete those videos, they can also get a contributor handbook that has that information written out. And then when they kind of complete that flow, they'll be able to unlock. We're kind of working with another group, like unlock kind of like a delegation layer. So that is our solution. We've also talked about doing kind of like a mentor-mentee thing, which is something I did more in Bankless DAO, but I felt like I couldn't really scale it because I was working on onboarding there. And so I think just like bringing in that personal experience will really help. And then let's see, we had a few other things, but yeah, I think we need to, I like the interview idea. We need to interview people.
Yep, I think
That's
when
where we're at.
RN DAO is figuring out an incubation space, like, for Arbitrum projects, and like a lot of, even like Themes, I think, was working on onboarding pathways. So really figuring out, like trying to map out like, okay, these are the different ideas people have for how to do it. This is our idea, which is like making different onboarding videos and others, is like a good way to get people to think this is an experiment and not a business proposition, because business propositions don't pass in Arbitrum. How are we doing on time? Yeah.
Yeah, that's just the timer right there.
Right, okay. Yes, there's time. That's nice. Yeah. Yeah, so that's like, so I'll just run through some of like how we approach this problem. Like when we did a lot of research, we found that a lot of teams in Arbitrum ecosystem, like again, we interviewed teams, and what we found was that a lot of teams actually don't want grants. They said, we don't want free money or grants. What we actually want is Arbitrum DAO to be our customer, to be a customer of our products, and then we can go and say Arbitrum DAO is our customer and they're earning money from our product. That's the legitimacy that people wanted, not grants. So that's when we thought that, hey, what if we could do treasury diversification and combine that with ecosystem support? So we diversify our treasury into like products which earn us a yield, which are stable, which are liquid, and we also earn money of it, and we give those ecosystem projects like the legitimacy of Arbitrum DAO earning money from their product. So we basically proposed 35 million like ARB for doing it, and like we had a lot of interviews with different and the most important, like the most difficult thing to think through is the mechanism for selection of solutions. So you've mapped out the entire solution space. How does the DAO now decide which of the solutions to actually support and give money? And so that's one of the hardest things to think through. So I've like got a couple of principles for that. The first is what should be decentralized and what shouldn't be decentralized. So for example, in this proposal, like what is super centralized was the selection of a screening committee. Like I interviewed people and I knew who is a good person to be on the committee. So I just like didn't have any election for the committee or anything like that. I just handpicked 5 people and I like vote yes or no. You know, like this is the 5 people on the committee. That was centralized. The program manager who would run this program, again centralized. Like I found a good provider. I think that they can manage this program well, centralized. What was decentralized was the actual disbursement of money to providers. Because if you have a small committee deciding which ones to give vast and big contracts to, that's usually like a recipe for corruption. You know, that you have 5 people, they have huge power in actually giving grants and contracts to people who are in their industry. They might be working for them in like 2 years or 3 years. So, and it's a very small and close-knit industry. So so this part we made decentralized, that everybody who's applying, if they are deemed eligible by the screening committee, there's a snapshot poll, weighted voting, where you can divide your vote. I want 50% to this provider, 20% to this, and 10% to that. And the actual amount of money they would get from the 35 million ARB depends on their proportion of amount that they've got in votes. So if someone has got 10% of the votes, they'll get 10% of 35 million. If someone got 50% of the votes, they'll get half of this entire sanctioned amount. So you've actually changed the way that contract negotiations are done, which is usually that you just convince these 5 people and you'll be getting huge business. But now it's like, okay, if you can appeal to the wide base of Arbitrum voters, every vote is worth a certain amount in the, like which you get from the contract. So you've actually decentralized the process of awarding contracts. So that's the first thing, like choose what should be decentralized and what shouldn't be decentralized when you're writing your proposal or framework. Yeah, the second is to report it out, like just talk to different people in the ecosystem. That's like super important in even building allies, and also post early on the forum, you know, like this screening committee wasn't even there in the initial version. Then people replied saying, hey, we need expertise, we need experts to tell us who to vote for. So that's when we needed a screening committee to actually, and like the person who gave a lot of advice is actually the leader of the committee now, you know, like GFX Labs. So you get a lot of allies when you post on the forum as well early. And especially when you frame it as an experiment, you're more likely to get engagement. When you frame it as a business proposition, usually what ends up happening is the worst thing ever, which is you post and then no one replies to it. You know, that's like always the worst. So whereas when it's like an open discussion that, hey, we don't know the answers, this is like what we think could be an interesting thing for Arbitrum to like look into, you're more likely to get engagement as well on the thread. This is really important, like keep a poll at the end of the post. So basically, even if people don't engage with the proposal with comments, they can still vote on the forum itself. So in the Arbitrum DAO forum, like there's an option to embed a poll. So for example, I wasn't sure of the amount to choose in this proposal, like 35 million wasn't like, you know, we didn't initially know, like it's 1% of the treasury. So we kind of held a poll with 3 different options, and then people voted in that forum poll. And then someone said, hey, don't make us vote in the snapshot. So that's the other thing. Do you want a yes or no vote on the snapshot in the proposal, or do you want to actually give a range of amounts for people to vote for? And there are different criteria there.
And I think we're actually going to try and do that with the team submissions for the GovHack on the forum as well.
Yep, definitely. So embed polls at the end of your proposal so that you can get a somewhat sense check, and you can see even if people aren't commenting or liking, they might still be voting. So you get an extra way to measure engagement with your post. And yeah, like the other thing is also like the role of a committee. Like you're always going to have some form of a committee. Initially, I didn't want any committee for ARB. I said, no, let the token holders just vote. But then people said that, hey, we need a committee to just provide an opinion. Even if they don't give contracts, they have to give an opinion, look into each provider, tell us who to vote for, give recommendations. So you will always need some version of a committee, unfortunately, to shortlist projects and other things. What you do need to decide on is whether the committee is permanent or it gets dissolved. So, and honestly, like what I found is that if you want the top talent, it's much better to have a committee that gets dissolved within a fixed time period. So you have clear-cut tasks that, okay, you need to review proposals, make people decide which ones are eligible in the snapshot, and then provide a report card on each provider which delegates can review. And after that, your job is done. Like if the committee is dissolved, you're going to be paid for whatever you did during that. And whereas like proposals like the ARDC, like that's like a post. It's like a permanent position. Same with the Grant Council of LTIP. The LTIP Grant Council is like a permanent position. So decide whether you want that committee to be dissolved or whether you want it to be permanent. Yeah, and the last thing is program manager. So this is like, I've seen two things happen, like the experimental delegates incentive program. There, the person who wrote the proposal basically became the program manager. That, okay, we are going to pass this proposal, we will be the program manager and manage it. But in my case, like, I'm more keen on moving on to another proposal after this gets done, which is like around sequencer staking. Like we have a lot of ETH and Arbitrum sequencer, which we are not staking. So we can stake it, help secure Ethereum network, and also earn yield by staking it. So we actually hired a program manager to kind of look into this. So that's the other thing. If you have, like, make sure there's some continuity and try to hire a program manager of sorts to continue it even after you've gone on, because you'll write the proposal, it'll be like a period in your life and then you have to move on. So sometimes having a program manager to answer questions to the DAO and all is like really important. So there's 1 minute left, and if people have any questions or anything, then happy to go into that.
We good? No questions? Great. I mean, obviously, how long are you around for?
Yeah, I'm there in the day.
Okay, so people should nab you, right?
Yep.
If they see you walking by.
Yes, happy to even take a look at drafts and do some wordsmithing and anything else that people require over here.
Are you in the the GovHack Telegram group?
No, I have to still join that.
Okay, yeah, you could just, there's a QR code, so
Yeah.
people could also maybe like send you a link on the forum post for their proposal.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
great. So yeah, just
Thank
to
you.
quickly recap in the 30 seconds, like define the problem clearly, map out the solution space, including your own solution, create a mechanism for the DAO to select at least 2 solutions so that there's an experiment of like, hey, at the end of 1 year, we have data to decide which of the solutions perform better. And then decide, like, in that mechanism, try to decide what is decentralized and what isn't. Report out your proposal by talking to providers already working in the problem space. Keep a poll at the end of your proposal so that the DAO can vote. And when you have a committee, decide whether to dissolve or keep it permanent, and have a program manager to continue after you've gone. So, yep, that's the main
Awesome.
thing.
Thank you.